They can describe acts of sex, but pictures are out. Alberta's new rules for school library books follow an uproar last week after the Edmonton School Board included some major titles among those of the more than 200 books to be removed due to sexual content. CBC's Julia Wong is in Edmonton. And Julia, what's changed now in these new rules?
So one of the biggest changes that these new rules outline is that books that have graphic depictions or visual representations or visual depictions of graphic sexual acts, well, they will now need to be removed from school shelves. So we're talking about drawings, paintings, photos, video clips. Those are not deemed appropriate for schools to have in the classrooms and to make available to students. But as you mentioned, any books that in the written form describe explicit acts, that describe these sexual acts, they will be allowed to remain on the shelves. Now, this is different from the original ministerial order that the province put out months ago in a few different ways. One, it is much more narrow in scope. It also focuses very specifically on that visual component versus the written component, which is what the original rules targeted just a few months ago. Also, this new ministerial order will affect all grades. You know, previously it had been once students were passed or in grade 10, they might be able to access some of that non-explicit content. Well, this ban will cover those books for all grades now. As you mentioned, you know, this first really burst into the public sphere when a list obtained by CBC News from Edmonton Public Schools sort of detailed the books that would have been taken off shelves as a result of that original ministerial order. And it included many books that were considered classics by Albertans, by Canadians. We're talking about books including The Handmaid's Tale, A Brave New World, and Atlas Shrugged, and that really created an uproar. The premier then came out and she slammed the school board for what she called vicious compliance to the original rules that the province had put out. That then caused them to hit the pause button on these rules in the first place, and then took a few days. And now we have these new rules, this new ministerial order that outlines specifically that anything that has a graphic representation of a sexual act that will no longer be allowed on shelves.
This has been a polarizing, emotionally charged issue. What's the reaction been to the update?
Yeah, so reaction has slowly been rolling in. We did get a statement from Edmonton Public Schools saying that this narrows the scope to explicit images. They do say that classic books will be able to stay on the shelves, and they say that they will move forward in implementing these new rules. We also heard from someone from the Parents for Choice in Education, and this is an organization that has really been behind the book ban. And they said, well, while they aren't completely satisfied, they do appreciate that the province is sort of knocking this down to the local level. I also did just speak with the director of the Centre for Free Expression at Toronto Metropolitan University, and he had a lot of concerns because he says that it's those young adult graphic novels that are being specifically targeted, and he thinks that students who are 14, 15, 16, they could really benefit from some of the content in those books that might help them through issues related to self-doubt, that might help them work through issues related to suicide. So he has a lot of concerns about some students, in his eyes, not being able to access things that might be able to help them as they work through high school. So a lot still to be known as more people get up to speed on what this new ministerial order is. But what we do know is that the province is asking school boards to provide them that list of banned books by October 31st. And now the new implementation date for those books to be off the shelves is January 5th of next year.
Okay, Julia Wong, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, despite the changes, sexual health educators are still concerned that information regarding sexual education may not be reaching kids. Jessie Wolin is a certified sexual health educator and teacher. She's also the founder and director of Shift Education, a sexual education organization, and she joins us from Davis Bay, British Columbia. So the Alberta government, as we've heard, has narrowed the scope to focus strictly on explicit visual depictions of sex. What's your reaction to this revision?
Hi there. Thanks for having me on. I'm actually happy to see that they refined it. I think so many of us were concerned when we saw a lot of the classics being taken off the shelf. I think it was a really excellent move of educators and librarians that pushed back against the order.
It's interesting that there's so much attention on banning books here because presumably the internet is wide open to all kinds of content and lots of kids have access to it. What do you think of this emphasis on books and and it doesn't deal with the internet access, obviously?
You know what, Ian, I think you're exactly right and kind of nailing the real point here. I think it's super important for parents and educators and administrators to be taking a hard look at content that kids are looking at online. From being an educator for 16 years, one of my first moves when I go into the libraries is, go into the schools, is I go and check out the libraries and I pull all of their health education books. And I'm often surprised that they're missing a lot of really important up-to-date books about bodies, about health. And what I find is actually that there's not enough resource around, how your body works, all the body networks, about the nervous system, we have lots of mental health books, which is great, but it's the internet where kids are accessing inappropriate content. And then also, not to mention, folks that are unsafe can access our kids. So it's not to worry parents, but it is to kind of change the focus onto the real issue, which is that our kids need more support around making good choices online.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith reiterated on social media last week that the book ban will get pornographic images out of school libraries and the classics can remain on shelves. It's been a long time since I've been in a school library, but are there pornographic images there?
Not that I've found. I think that, occasionally there will be a graphic novel here or there, but here's the thing. Literacy is actually what's on the table right now. We want young people to be reading books, and we all know that it's very alluring to pick up our devices, myself included in that. So that's why graphic novels have taken off among young people. And actually, librarians are experts when it comes to what kids want to read, what they're looking at, what's the most interesting, historical fiction that can be reinterpreted in a graphic novel will draw kids in. So whatever kids can be reading is better than nothing. I have not seen pornographic images in libraries. That's not something that I have witnessed myself.
One last thing, as of September 1st, parents in Alberta are required to opt their children into sex education courses. How do you feel about that?
That is actually a very big concern of mine. When we move to an opt-in model, what that means is a lot of kids get lost in the shuffle. That means if you forget to send in your permission form, which is a really common thing to happen in a family. I'm a parent. So especially at this time of year, there's tons of notices going back and forth. So if kids forget to do that, that means they might miss out on some really integral information that they need to be healthy, happy young adults that's delivered in an age-appropriate manner. And in fact, I would say that it's a real miss because Alberta had a wonderful, robust education system that entailed Alberta Health Services teachers teaching health education. So actually, it was like experts from the medical field that were the ones teaching in the schools, and that's going to be changing. And so it's a concern. I hope that they don't derail a lot of the wonderful things that the teachers have been doing in Alberta for years.
All right, Jessie, thank you very much. Jessie Wolin, a certified sexual health educator.